Attention campers, this is your camp director. In today's all-camp event for the Sapphic Mess Badge, we will be discussing bodies, bottoms, but I'm a cheerleader, codependent, lesbian, space alien, seek same, and D.E.B.S. Joining me is our favorite messy lesbian, Camp Councilor Carly Perkins. Additionally, as a reminder, writing Andrew Garfield has big lesbian energy on bathroom stalls is still vandalism, even if it feels true. And as always, it's going to be a great day at Camp Film Camp. Hello campers, welcome to Camp Film Camp. Joining me today for our Sapphic Mess Badge is our very, very favorite messy lesbian, Carly Perkins. Hello, Carly.
Hello.
So Carly and I came up with this slate together, which is different than I normally do. And I just kind of want to throw it over to Carly real quick. Carly, tell me about this slate and kind of why you wanted to go this route and how we picked these movies.
Yeah, when we were talking about like what I wanted to come on the channel and do, we were talking about you didn't want to pigeonhole me into gay, but I was like, no, I want to do gay. Like there's other stuff I might want to do later, but I definitely want to start with gay. I love messy relationships. I love lesbians. So we're just kind of smashing my two favorite things together. And it's a damn good slate. Which I realized they're all female directors, which is amazing. So that's awesome.
Now that you mentioned that, it's true. I knew that, but I didn't think about that while it was, that's really cool. Now I know 3 of these were movies you had seen before, and there were 2 first watches for you, right?
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
There was one that was a first watch for me. The other 3 we had both already seen, which we'll get into which ones they are. And I think the first watch for me is also a first watch for you because I don't think either of us really knew anything about it before we decided to do this. It's one that had always been considered a campy lesbian movie. So we decided to add it. But let's just without any further ado, let's go into our first movie, which is going to be Bodies. Now this is one of 2 that I saw in theater because it's not the most recent, but the second most recent movie. I think Bottoms is the most recent one, right? Bottoms came out after Bodies. Yes.
So. Yeah.
I should have this information, but I don't. So you saw this one in theater as well, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So let's talk about briefly talk about Bodies. I have a theory about this movie. It's not about the lesbian portion of it, but that this movie was originally going to be called something else, and they were going to and maybe there's information on this out here. I haven't looked it up. I should have this information again. But that they were going to be playing werewolf because that's basically what they're playing is werewolf. And maybe even that the movie would have been called something to have to do with that. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Is Bodies a game that you had known about before this, other than the fact that it's werewolf?
I know there's like a million different iterations of werewolf,
right? Mafia and whatever. Like there's a lot of different versions of. And the reason I think it used to be that is number one. Lee Pace's character later says, "Are we still playing werewolf?" And then he starts doing the howl thing right before he gets killed. And the other reason is because the same year the movie Werewolf Within came out, which is a live action version of the movie Werewolf of the game Werewolf. So I think that they probably switched that up at some point because everywhere else they call it Bodies, but at that one point he calls it Werewolf, and I feel like they couldn't redo that part because of the howling that he does. But that's just my theory. I have no clue. What did you think of this movie when you saw it in the theater?
When I first saw it, like the ending's so interesting. Like I didn't know how to feel about it at first, just because it's so not at all what you expect. Like I'm sure some people probably called it, but like just the fact that it's all an accident and it's just their paranoia feeding on each other. Like I didn't love it when I first watched it, but like when I pondered it and rewatched it, like I really love that choice and it really fits with, especially with this group of characters.
Yeah.
So I really love, and I always loved like the middle part, the beginning part, the character interactions. But the ending's the one that took me a little bit to come around on.
Okay. Did you, were you surprised by the ending when it got to it? Like you hadn't picked up?
No, I had no idea. I was like,
okay.
I was just shocked. I was like, I mean, like it makes perfect sense, but also it really makes you think back to, oh, none of those were murders. And like going in, you're like, there's going to be a ton of murders. So it's very interesting.
Well, yeah. And similar with me, I did figure it out a little bit, or not figure it out. I'm not going to say I figured it out because I don't know that I didn't figure out like how, friggin', what's his name? Dude, SNL dude. Oh my God. Pete Davidson. I didn't know how Pete Davidson had died. Like I hadn't figured like that out that even that was an accident that went. So by the time we got to that, and that was really funny. I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. At the point that Rachel Sennett, how do you say that? Do you know how to say that? Sennett?
I've always said Senate, but I'm not sure if that could be
I've always said Sennett, but I hear people saying Senate all the time, so I think it's probably Sennett. So we're going to call her Rachel Sennett. At the point that she died, I was like, huh. I'm realizing like, okay, so that wasn't the killer who did it unless the girl she was tangling with is the killer. And then that kind of made me think, wait a minute. No one so far that we've seen die has died by the hands of the killer, at least that we've seen happen. You know, we don't know about the girl who falls down the stairs. We don't know about her, and that's the thing that kind of keeps it, which I think is a very smart move on the writer's part and director, is that if they had shown her fate fully, we would have put the pieces together earlier. But the fact that there's that one like blank spot that we don't know what happened exactly helps with the mystery. So then by the time we get to the end, I'm like, okay, I had noticed a pattern that they had that these had all been the things, but I was like, I still didn't. I thought maybe somebody was orchestrating this or something. I didn't know exactly what was happening. So when you get to the end and you see the TikTok that he kills himself by accident, I'm like, okay, so that makes complete sense, and I really dig it. The reason that I think that works so well is that I'm a cusp millennial, meaning that I was basically raised as a Gen X, and then at some point they started calling me millennials when they needed to blame me for things. And then they started blaming me for Gen Z stuff as well. And I'm like, dude, I'm basically Gen X. So my generation feels very separate from this. And this is the interesting thing for me, is as I get older, is seeing Gen Z making their movies and seeing how they see the world. And the thing that I love about this movie and Bottoms, which we'll get to, both movies make fun of certain things within the Gen Z, within Gen Z culture, which I think is really, really funny. And I think that is kind of is why the whole everybody's killing themselves by accident or killing each other by accident thing really works, because it kind of feels like that it makes sense that the big Gen Z killer is just themselves. You're a Gen Zer, right?
No, I'm on the other side of the cusp where I'm barely a millennial. My brother's 2 years younger than me, and he is a Gen Zer, although he denies it. But
Dylan's a Gen Zer, and you guys are like really close in age, and that's why I was. But yeah, so you guys are on like that cusp, on the opposite sides of that cusp. Okay, as a cusp, other side, the millennial, how do you feel about that in this and in Bottoms? We can kind of talk about both there, but how they address their own culture.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because I feel like some people could look at this movie and be like, "Oh, it's just making fun of that generation," especially because the characters are so ridiculous with throwing out terms like, "Oh, you're ableist," "I'm an ally," "You trigger me," all that stuff. But I mean, I just love it. It's just so much fun with the characters. Like the characters are supposed to be ridiculous. I don't think they're supposed to be like, "Oh, this is Gen Z necessarily." It's just like a specific snapshot of these this very privileged subsection of Gen Z that likes to use all those buzzwords and, just, I mean, it's a very privileged group of characters. And I think it's very telling that I think the only person that doesn't really use those words is her girlfriend, the one who isn't coming from this privilege and these riches.
Right. Yeah. Maria Bakalova's character. I agree. There's the privilege in this one specifically. There is that privilege they get, and they address that a lot too. Where it's like, yeah, but they're rich. Well, we're all rich, but they're like rich, like that thing. Because there is even like the black characters in this movie are more privileged than some of the other people, and that's not. There still is a white privilege going on in this movie, and you can see that as well. And I think they do address that also. But like everybody in this movie is privileged except for that character, and that's kind of why we at first feel like she is the cipher, like the one that we're seeing through her point of view. But then it becomes. She becomes a suspect simply because she is the one that's different and outside of where they are. I think that makes for a very interesting dynamic. A lot of this, it's interesting because I was the same. Like I liked it better rewatching it than I did watching it the first time, and not necessarily because I didn't dig the ending, just because I can't even tell you why I didn't like it as much the first time as I did the second time, but I think knowing what happens in it is helpful, which is interesting because it is all about the like trying to figure out what's going on the first time you're watching it, but the second time as you're watching kind of the way that everything is being set up and the kind of the way that how well it's written for that and the social dynamics of the story is very interesting and very, very good. All right. So I would like to segue into bottom since we're talking about the Gen Z thing. Do you have anything additional to say about bodies before we transfer?
No, the only thing that like really stuck out to me when I was rewatching is just the mob mentality of kicking her girlfriend out is just so terrifying. Like the way they're just like shoving her out into the rain. Like every time I watch that part, it's just like terrifying to me. I'm just like, oh my God, like these privileged assholes just being like, well, we don't like that you're here and we're a little scared, so we're just going to throw you out in the rain and potentially kill you, which is just wild.
Yeah, that part I was surprised because I knew what was happening. I didn't expect anything to really like rattle me too much, but that part did when I rewatched it was that like especially because there's a hurricane, she's being thrown out. It's like very awkward social thing and yeah, I agree that part is very much is very affecting in that movie. But let's move on to bottoms, which I also saw in theater. You saw in theater as well, I believe, correct?
Yes.
So this one is another Rachel Sennett, who recently I had mentioned her is messy lesbian movies is her bread and butter. Really, she's very, very good at them. But this time we get Io Debris, who I really, really love as well. I love both very much. The thing that the thing that stuck out to me this time when watching it is how and this is just true in movies. The standard of beauty and really everything in movies is different than real life, and how these two beautiful women are the ugly, untalented women in this movie. It blows my mind. But how did you feel about bottoms? Did you? You had seen it in theater. Did a rewatch change anything for you at all?
I was very hyped on this movie going in. Like, it was one of my most anticipated since I heard the premise. I was like, oh, a lesbian fight club? Like, that sounds amazing. Like, just to get chicks, like, I love it. It's everything I want. It's messy. It's like characters doing like awful things for a funny reason. So like when I finally watched it, I was a little lower on it than I wanted to, just because I had hyped it up so much in my head. And on rewatch, I really loved it. It's funny because I tried to show this to my brother, like, oh, you've never seen it, and I have already shown this to him. So this is like probably like my third rewatch, honestly, which is it's just, yeah, I really love this movie. It's just so like when you think Messy Sapphics, this is one of the first thing that comes into my mind, just because they're so like even the good main character, Io Debris, even she's not doing good things. Like, she's letting her friend manipulate these girls just because it kind of benefits her. Right. And I love having protagonists that like kind of suck. Like, it always makes for a more interesting movie, show, whatever story you're telling. And like, I just love showing people who are complicated. And so I'm a big Seahawks fan, and I love Marshawn Lynch in this movie. He was hilarious when he was playing for the Seahawks, and now he's hilarious now in this movie. Every moment he's on screen, I'm just dying. He's just so good. And one thing I love is like he wanted to star in this movie because he said he wasn't the best to his sister when she came out, and he thought being in this movie like would get them closer to each other, and like kind of felt like redeeming that a little bit. And that just like touches me so much because, when you're a teenager, you're going to be a little bit of an asshole. So I just love seeing people like trying to do better when they're like actually have the maturity and that type of thing. So like the fact that it actually touches on that is like amazing. I love that so much.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not really a professional football person, so I knew the name Marshawn Lynch, but I didn't know who he was. So when I saw him in this, I knew that he was in it because I'm friends with you, and you had mentioned it. And you saw this before me, and you're like, he's so funny, and I was like, I'm sure I was sure that was Seahawks bias, but it wasn't, because he is hilarious in this movie, and I really relate to his reason for doing this, because I'm queer now, and I mean I always was, but I've come to terms with that now. But I grew up in a very conservative area, and before I could come to terms with that, I was not always super chill about things, and could have handled things a lot differently when I was a teenager. Not only has he changed his outlook, but he is taking active steps to make amends, because that's the thing. It's like, you can apologize, but he's like, I want to actively do something to show my support and to hopefully get me closer to my sister, who I was not super cool with originally, like when we were younger. So I think that's awesome. That makes me like his performance so much more. But he is very, very funny. His whole like he does it because he wants to be an ally, and he does that. But then once it all breaks down, it's like, see, I was right about women. You all are bad. Like, that whole storyline. That's very, very, very funny to me. This is another one that takes shots at Gen Z culture, and even more so than the other one, because I think that Bodies, while it does take some shots, it kind of just says them and hangs them out there. This one feels like it understands the culture a little bit more, and is not just parodying the culture, but actually like commenting on the culture of Gen Z, which I think is very funny. And this one was co-written by Rachel Sennett too.
Who was it?
So
That's great.
yeah, so I think that that kind of seems to be a thing for her, is the kind of commenting voice of a generation. That's where she's going with. That's what she's trying to be, I think, and has a very, very good shot at being the voice of this generation, of that generation anyway, Gen Z. This one also improved for me on rewatch. I really liked it the first time. I thought it was very, very funny. It was a lot of it really worked for me. This one improved for me even more than Bodies improved for me. There's something in the messaging in this and just the comedy that really is almost evergreen. Like, it just keeps it doesn't feel tired. Like Bodies at some point, it's like, once you can kind of see the seams, and so like, this one always feels fresh to me, and I really enjoyed it my second time watch. Actually, I think I've seen it like 3 times now as well, because I think I did rewatch it when it first came out on home video. I'm very old, so I still call it home video when it comes out on streaming. All right, Carly, as a lesbian, which you are, can you tell me about the lesbian representation in this movie, or how you feel about the way it is? Because it's not. I don't want to say it's not flattering, but it's not flattering. Like, it feels very real to me, which can feel, if to the unenlightened, can feel almost negative. But I don't feel that way. I want to know how you feel about. But I'm pansexual. I'm the last person. Well, the straight man is probably the last person. I'm the second to last person that should be speaking on how lesbians are represented. So, how do you feel about that?
I love it. One thing I really like how they make one of the popular girls they're trying to get with queer, and they make the other straight, like, because they easily could have just been like, oh, those are just 2 straight girls. Mm-hmm. But I like how like, even if you are like, oh, all the other characters suck, at least you have like that one as like the good queer person, the good lesbian, or not. She wouldn't be lesbian because she was dating someone else before that, but like, I love how they have the good queer person, and I feel like older queer films, I feel like they have to make the characters perfect, because it's like, oh well, if that gay person's bad, then homophobic people will be able to like feed off of it or whatever,
right?
And that's why I like more in recent movies where it's like, no, they can be messy and awful, and like,
right,
and you get that with all kinds of representation, not just LGBTQ,
right?
So I love that they're like, they're messy, and they're different kinds of bad. Like, there's several gay characters in this that are they're kind of everywhere on a spectrum of horrible, lying about everything, to innocent and not really doing anything wrong. And I really appreciate that.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Like, there was a time when good representation meant that person is innocent, or are only being shown in a positive light, and I think that that is good to some extent, like, to show the representation, to not, especially if the representation generally is done by people outside of the community and is generally not handled well. It makes sense that you kind of have to at first show the good, show these things in a good light. I love that we're at a place where the not only are the queer people in this not the innocent ones, they are the aggressors in this movie. They are imperfect cipher characters, which I too absolutely love. I like how you mentioned the cheerleader girls. One of them ended up being gay, one of them to be straight. I love that the one that was straight, they kept like reiterating it, and they did that because in movies like this in the past, that person would probably end up being, oh well, I didn't, I couldn't come to terms with it, but I am in love with you. They kept like, there's that point where it's like, they're gay and I'm so not, like, that I just like gay porn. That, that whole thing, I really like that that they because it feels like to me all of that, all the things that we just mentioned, different types of representation, the fact that they could that they kept that girl straight when you would kind of expect it in a movie like this, where it all feels like an insane amount of this feels like running while the other movies were walking. You know, the other movies walked so this one could run. That's what it feels like. This feels like it was the goal. This movie does, which is why it's pretty high for me, especially on rewatch as I'm watching it. It's very funny, and the actors in it are very, very funny. I like how the straight characters in a lot of the straight characters in this movie are gay coded. The football players specifically are very gay coded, but they never. That's not really a plot point. It's just even in this picture. I'll bring it here. This picture behind. Oh no, I did a bad job. Hold on. Oh no, I've done it again. I like how gay coded the straight characters are, and even if they are gay coded, they're still straight at the end of the day. I love that. Okay, well, we're gonna move on unless you have anything else to talk about with bodies. I keep saying that bottoms.
Bottoms. I had a few quick things. The complicated needle drop by Avril Lavigne every time. It just hits so hard. It's so good. And just like the ending is it's so campy. It's like so silly and like they're murdering these football players. It's like that should be a bad thing, but like it's just played so well. It's so funny. It is absolutely love it.
And they could have not said that they were dead because they would have been so easy for all those football players to live, but they made sure to let us know that they all died, which is really, really funny. Complicated needle drop. Here I have a thing because a lot of people will roll their eyes at a very, very obvious needle drop. I'm just a girl in Captain Marvel. That kind of a needle drop. Holding out for a hero in Mario Brothers movie. Like there's a type of needle drop that people will roll their eyes at. I feel like the complicated one at this moment in this movie is one of those. However, there's a reason it feels obvious because it's perfect. There's a reason that those feel so obvious. It's because they are meant to be there. You saw it coming because it's the right call. So that's kind of how I feel about those type of things. I agree. The complicated needle drop is very, very good and should be celebrated.
And one last thing I wanted to mention is I love how dark the humor is in this film. Like it's not just funny. It deals with they deal with murder, rape, stalking, terrorism. Like this movie gets so dark, and I think that's also part of why it's so funny. Just because the places it goes are just like places that you would be like, you would think, oh, you can't talk about that like as a joke, but because it's written by women, because it's directed by a woman, like they can go there because it's like, well, this is our experience, so we can like really show that in the script, and it's like so real but also absolutely hilarious.
Well, and that goes back to the thing I was saying before about like how there was a time when you shouldn't do that, and it feels like progress that you can say those kind of things. It's kind of like what I always say, like trans jokes right now are bad. But the world will be healed one day when we can make a trans joke in good faith that's not hurting that community. That's kind of what it feels like. It feels like there's a progress that's happened here where you can do that because things have gotten better. Things are not perfect and there's still work to do. And we keep going backwards every 4 Novembers, it seems like. It is progress, and it's a step in the right direction, which I think is awesome. So let's move on to but I'm a cheerleader, which I also need to show this background. The army guy with the little soldier beside him with the gun pointed down, like it's very, very gay, and it makes me very happy. And that's what this movie is. It's very gay and very, very happy for me. When did you see this movie for the first time?
Oh, I saw this. I saw this before I was even really into film.
Oh, really? Okay.
So, like, so I saw this a while ago. I think maybe 10 years-ish ago. I think I saw this before I knew I was gay. And I still absolutely loved it. Like,
nice.
I think I've seen this at least 4 or 5 times at this point.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it several times as well. I really like this movie. I worked in a video store when I was a teenager, and so I saw a lot of stuff, and I don't always remember when I saw things for the first time. I'm pretty sure I saw it back then. I've seen this a lot of times. I absolutely adore this movie. It is, and part of it is, and the more I watch it, the more I appreciate it, because part of this is that this one of all of them is the one I kind of relate to the most, because I had said before, I resisted my true nature for so long, and there are those parts where people are like telling her that she's gay, and she's like, but I'm not. I like men. I kiss men. I do this, like, and then in her head she's like reliving all this stuff that kind of is like, but there's this, and then she's like denying it. That is so real for a person who had especially who came up around in that time, like I did. It's such a true thing that, like, I used to have this very, very funny, hilarious joke where I used to talk about how I used to worry that I was gay, and then I would I was so worried I was gay, and I would agonize over it, and they're like, gosh, I hope not, because I really don't want to have sex with a man. And that's a joke, because like that's the indicator that I'm not gay. However, that was also a lot of denial on my part, that I like everything in my life fixed with jokes. But that's kind of the feeling that you get from her early in this movie, which is like, I can't be gay. I have a boyfriend. Like, I can't be gay. This is the thing with this. Do you? I don't know your history, and you don't have to go through it. Do you relate to anything in this? Because I grew up very conservative Christian, and so a lot of this really hits home without his conversion camp. I never had to do that, but I've been in churches where that was encouraged. So, is that something that you had any familiarity with, or?
Yeah, because for a while I thought I was bisexual, because I was like, well, I'm not utterly repulsed by men, so obviously I'm attracted to them both if I'm into women. And it took me a while to like kind of dissect that and realize, oh, literally the only guys I find attractive are celebrities. And that's because they're literally unattainable. So like, it does feel real, her being like, well, everyone looks at girls all the time. Obviously, that doesn't mean you want to kiss them. And like her just being like, no one likes kissing their boyfriend, obviously. Like, that's never fun for women. Like, and just her commenting about like, oh, everyone looks at women like that. And it's just so good. Like, just the things queer people tell ourselves, either because we want to fit in or just because we genuinely believe what we're being fed about what it makes a gay person. And some people know from very young, but I feel like for a lot of people, it is a journey to figure out what box you fit in. Well, in terms of sexuality and also in terms of gender too. Like, both can have that same kind of confusion. So this movie was always very, like, even before I knew it was gay, it was relatable. I think that's part of why I found it so funny before I thought it was gay, is that even though I wasn't aware of it, like on some level I like related to it. Cause like I started out just thinking, oh, I'm just an ally. Cause like I was on Tumblr a lot and there was a lot of gay people on Tumblr. So I was like, oh, I'm just an ally. And then just slowly made my way down the path to lesbianism. where I am today.
Technology, and this is something that they didn't really have to deal with in this movie because that wasn't a thing, really big thing yet. We barely had the internet by this point back then, but technology there's a reason there's an increase in people finding out who they are recently, and it's because being able to connect to a lot of different people helps you understand the world in a way that your tiny bubble doesn't allow. Not only that, but technology itself, algorithms have gotten so good. The number of people that I hear about realize that they are bisexual or lesbian or whatever because their TikTok algorithm knew it before they did is very funny, but also it kind of it puts things into perspective for me. I've always been skeptical of people who throw out any type of anything just wholesale, like social media, it's bad and no one should use it or whatever, or people, I don't have a TV in my house, any of those type of people, because I think everything has a place and everything is good, and your relationship with all of that stuff is between you and your therapist. Like, it's not anybody else's business. But the technology has become an asset to some people, no matter no matter what kind of evil billionaire owns whatever thing. There is value in this for our society because people are discovering who they are because of because of the way that technology lets us relate to each other. Again, not about this movie, but just from what you were saying there, just to piggyback off that. For this one, there was a lot of things, as I said, a lot of it that I really identified with, a lot of it that was very familiar to me growing up in a very religious, conservative area that really resonated with me, or rather that I found very familiar. And it's not just that, like, even if, as you've said a few times, like even before you knew you were gay, like this one hit for you. And I think that's because it's a genuinely good movie. I mean, honestly, I think all of these movies we're going to talk about are genuinely good in their own way. But this one is just very, very well written, very well produced. The satire in this is so spot on. So it's crisp. I like to call it. It's whip sharp. It's very, very good. And I think that it is genuinely a very good movie, whether you consider the queer messaging or not. It's just very well made film. All right. So I would like to, unless you have anything else to add about But I'm a Cheerleader. I have a feeling we're going to talk about this one again soon, and I'm always wrong, so maybe not. But we'll see. But let's move on to Codependent, Lesbian, Space Alien, Seek Same. This is the one neither of us had seen. And this one I had heard about before we decided to do this. I had heard about it because I was I was looking up campy movies at one point, and this one came up a few times, and I was like, wow, that's. And so when we decided to do this, we needed another movie because originally it was just going to be gay was the theme, and so we had 4 lesbian movies and one not a lesbian movie, and I was like, we should probably filter this down to lesbian so we don't just do gay and then we can't do gay again, or we can do gay but then we have to figure out a different way to do gay. So we should probably just do that. So we cut out the other movie, which I'm sure one day we will cover, so we're not going to talk about that right now. And I was like, hey, what about this one? I've heard about this one. And when I told you the name, tell me how you felt.
I was like, I don't need to know anything about it. Like, if that's the title of the movie, then we should definitely cover it. Like,
yeah,
beautiful.
I kind of feel the same. I'm like, this movie can could suck, and we'd need to cover it just because the title is incredible. Now, this is a very low budget movie. It's one of the most low budget films I've seen in a very, very long time, maybe ever. It's very low budget. What I love about it is that it does not. It's not ashamed of its low budget. It wears it on its sleeve. It doesn't try to. I mean, there's that point where the alien girl is wearing the cups on her ears, like taped to a thing over her head. It's not shying away from it, and it's like no one is going to be if we try a little bit harder to make it look like that, nobody is going to be fooled that this is not a very, very low budget movie, and they were right, and so they embraced it. Tell me how you felt about this one upon your first viewing.
So I didn't love it, but I did like the low budget. Like I love the low budget charm of it. Like there are some low budget movies that are just for whatever reason, I'm just like not interested in them, and I don't know why. But this wasn't one of them. This was one that just had like a charm to it. I think part of it was the self-awareness of how low budget it was. And along with the premise that their love is adding ozone to the air, like it just leans into the silliness of it. And like, it's very low budget, with a very silly premise. And I had a lot of fun with this. Especially like, I love the way they talk, like their language. It's very like there's this one quote at one point where they're like, the elders can perform intercourse on themselves, which is a great way to say they can F themselves. I just love how they're so stilted and weird, and how they kind of explore Earth and like their emotions, and how they're so bad at not being in love. They're just like, it's tough to not just be in love. Like it's very charming and very sweet.
I pretty much agree across the board there. I also didn't love it, but I liked it a lot. Like it was hard not to enjoy it. I will say this, and maybe I'm ashamed to admit this, but you know how they say all lesbian space aliens look alike? It was embarrassingly far into the movie before I realized there was 3 aliens and not 2. Because I at one point I was like, why is that one hitting on this one? She already has a girlfriend. And I was like, oh no. And then I realized, I was like, those aren't the same. Oh no. But all lesbians look alike. So it's but so it was embarrassingly long before I got there. But there are parts of this that are extremely funny, and there are bits that really, really worked for me. Sometimes it's a bit aimless and it doesn't quite work as well as I wanted to. Once we get to the conclusion of some of the things in there, it doesn't quite pay off the way that I think that they had hoped it was. But when it does hit, it hits really, really well. And that's the thing about this that I like. The Men in Black agents who we see just basically talking in the car the whole time, their conversations specifically sometimes worked really well and were really funny and were really worked really well. Sometimes I didn't really know what they were getting at, and by the end I was like, I don't know what the trans man conversation was. Did you understand that at all?
No, not really.
Because I thought it was going to reveal something or setting up something, but it never really came back around. I don't know why, like Debbie, right? Is a trans man, right? Debbie. And I'm like, I don't know what like that. I don't know what they were trying to say. I don't know what the joke was. So there was some little things like that just didn't work for me. But there was a lot of their conversations that I really, really did enjoy. And that's just because I'm a person who really likes to just watch movies about people just sitting around talking. So that part didn't bug me. So some of their conversations worked for me quite well. Some of it didn't. It's also, well, and if any of you watched the series Girls on HBO. The one of the Men in Black agents is on that show. In fact, he was like one of my favorite characters on that show. Well, B was briefly on it. Alex Karpovsky was on Girls, and he was in this. He was the rookie agent, the one who ends up being an alien at the end. He's actually been quite a bit. But I enjoyed that part of the movie for the most part. I will say that because of its low budget, there are certain things that were harder to get behind because not all the actors weren't always the best. The main love interest of the main alien wasn't as convincing as a love interest as I wanted her to be. And it's easy for the aliens because they don't have to be convincing, because they're actually their job is to not be convincing. It's easier for them. So I think she bore the brunt of some of my more negative feelings, and it wasn't her fault. It was just the nature of this movie that it wasn't going to work very well. But did you feel any of that? Did you feel like it was harder to connect with some of the characters because of that?
Not necessarily, but I'm not the biggest, like, when it comes to performances and acting, I'm not the best judge of acting, like, unless it's pretty obviously, like, awful. Usually I'm just, it's also the same for me for, like, great performances. Like, something has to blow me away for me to, like, really love the performance. So.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. But the alien characters, the putting out personal ads, trying to find people, the going on the dating show to get the message out to the other alien. All that stuff was very good. I thought the writing in this was really good. It was hampered a little bit by the lower budget, which, again, like we said, it embraced that, but had it had more of a budget, this might have worked. This would have worked even better, I think. So, but I'm going to move on unless you have anything else to say about.
I just want to say I love that they were like, "Oh, we just need to wear hats now. It's not love. That's not what's adding to the ozone." That was great. I was like,
yeah,
beautiful.
Yeah, because it was the shining head, the ball. So now we just have to all wear hats. All right, so that brings us to D.E.B.S. Now, this is also one that you had not seen, correct?
Yes.
And I picked this one because I had a feeling you were going to love it. And because I remember when it came out and I watched it, and it made me laugh, and I thought it was really good. It's a very silly movie. And so once we were doing this, I was like, I bet this is either she's not going to get it and it's not going to connect with her at all. If it does connect with her at all, she's going to absolutely love it. So I need to know, where did you fall on D.E.B.S?
Matt, this is a masterpiece. Oh my God. While watching it, like 10 minutes in, I was like, oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever seen. Like, just beautiful.
Yeah. I really enjoyed this. I didn't remember a whole lot about it. I just remembered certain things about it because I hadn't seen it basically in 20 years or whatever. So, or close to that. So when I'm rewatching the movie, there's certain things that pop out that I was like, oh yeah, I really, really enjoyed that. Number one, I love that it feels like almost like it's a remake of a show or a series. Like, it feels like there's a history that just doesn't exist for this movie. I love that, and I think that's intentional. I think it's meant to feel like, because especially back then there were a lot of live action or movies being made based on old TV shows and stuff like that. Starsky and Hutch was one. Man from U.N.C.L.E. is one. Like, that was later on, but there was a lot of that. And that it feels like there was an effort to make it feel like that, which I thought was was really cool. Um, there, and of course, there's a very stereotypical Asian woman in this. Of course, the stereotype is French. She's very stereotypically French, which also makes me laugh. The fact that the fact that they didn't use the obvious stereotype, I think, is one of the most funny things. Like they should not have done a very stereotypical Asian character. However, the fact that they still made her a stereotype, just a French one, always smoking, always having men in her bed, like just a very stereotypical French character, made me is one of the funniest things in this movie to me. So I want to hear about your experience with it because it's masterpiece. You say I'd like to hear kind of how what you loved about it.
It's like a big part of it is just it's so campy and like just it starts with her like looking for her gun and her pants that were at the bottom of the hamper. Or her, I think it was her skirt or something. But just starting with that, I was just like, oh my God, that's amazing. Like I've always loved like stories that are like about female spies. Like I was a big fan of Nikita on the CW when I was a teenager. Like I was obsessed with that show just because something about I don't care about most spy stories, but if they're female spies, there's something about that just excites me extra much. And just like it's just so the tech is so campy. Like I loved when they were getting like the information on Lucy Diamond and like you could pause and just see like the information they had on her, like how she just tried to sink Australia, like just the little details in there that were just so funny. The tech was so campy, it was so good, and like that on top of that would make me enjoy it. But then you also add like a rom-com she's into the villain type thing, like that is just so amazing. Like literally this is the exact movie that if you plucked teenage me, if you could pluck it out of teenage me's mind and it would be literally like made for me. Like enemies to lovers, lady spies, doesn't take itself too seriously. Like it's so cute. And I love how Lucy's like, oh, she's into me, she just doesn't know it yet. Like it's just it's so good. I'm obsessed with this movie. Like
nice.
It's fantastic.
I wish it had done better because it's obviously rife for sequels, and we didn't ever get any of that. It is based on a short film by the same director. That a short film a couple years before this movie came out, so basically proof of concept, I guess. But yeah, that's really all we get from this group of ladies. I also love some of the things that the campier things that it does. There's a bit, and it's hard to draw a line sometimes between them being intentionally campy and negligent. I don't know which some of these are, but there's one that I choose to believe. There's some of them. Okay, all of them I choose to believe they did on purpose. One of those things is when Lucy is climbing up the wall outside of whatever her name is, the main character's house, with her little squeegee things of making the plunger sound as she goes up. Everything about that is very clearly she's laying flat on the floor doing that because the way her arms are bent, the way that they just keep like slipping as she's doing everything about that feels like the 1960s Batman, because that's how they used to do that. They used to build a wall on the floor and then have them climb a rope like they were climbing the side of a building. It very much feels like that. And that's the thing that I really love about this, is that there's very much that 1960s camp spy thing going on that I really like. The fact that they not only when they were staking out Lucy, they were setting on like the swings up in the rafters or whatever, but that during their training, part of their training was them just sitting on those swings, just sitting on the swings there together. There's a lot of that. I agree. I feel the same. Like there's so much of this that is ridiculous and campy, that it just works really well. And again, I choose to believe that it is all intentional because that makes it a really, really good movie. There's that montage during her like capture when she's that is straight out of like a 1990s TV show. It's so funny, and I think a person who doesn't see the value in the camp in this would roll their eyes at it. But I think that if you have a little faith in this movie, you could see how genius that scene is, because it's very stereotypical. Everything that happens in it is parody. It's satire. It I love that. That's one of my favorite scenes in the movie, because it not only is it doing that, but it's doing it so perfectly that it feels like it's directly from one of those type, like a TV show or a movie from the 80s and 90s. Do you remember that montage?
Yes, it was great.
It's very good.
They're great.
How do you feel about the lesbian relationship in this one?
I mean, it's enemies to lovers. I love it so much.
Yeah.
And I love how Amy, her name was Amy.
Amy, yes.
Doesn't know she's gay. Like she doesn't know. But Lucy Diamond's like, no, that woman's gay. Let's go.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, and like she just like starts seducing her, and like she kidnaps her, and then is like trying to get her to kiss her, and her friend's like, you almost let her kiss you. It's like, I'm not gay, but it's just, they're adorable. I love, like not the best decision making by Amy, like letting herself get captured and then not telling anyone anything.
Right.
But
everybody's justifiably angry in that.
Yeah, she's being a messy Sapphic, and I love it. And I can't remember when in the movie they say this. I think it's near the end, where she says, I have a date with the devil. And it's just like, oh my God, that's amazing. I love that.
There's a very cheesy moment at the end of the movie. It's actually the climax of the film, where they are running and they meet in the same place they met the first time and pull the guns on each other. It's so cheesy, but it's so cheesy it goes all the way around back to being brilliant. Like it's so bad it's awesome is how I feel about that. It works very, very well because of how very, very bad it is. All right. So that was D.E.B.S. I'm so glad you loved it, because I absolutely knew that you would. And I hope it becomes a regular viewing regular for you in your in the future. But let us move on to our scores. We're gonna, or not our scores. We're gonna rank them. So before, actually, no, we're going to go ahead and rank them right now. We're going to start with 5. Carly, what is your number 5?
Codependent lesbian space alien seeks same.
I don't know if this is going to be a surprise to anybody, but my number 5 is Bodies, Bodies, Bodies.
Oh.
Carly, what is your number 4?
Bodies, Bodies, Bodies.
And my number 4 is Codependent lesbian space alien seek same. So those two are not going to be in our deep dive. They are firmly planted at the end of our ranking. This is where it gets hard for me, because my top 3, I had a number 1, my 2 and 3. I went back and forth so much with that. So let's go on to your number 3, Carly.
My number 3 is Bottoms.
Oh no, I can see what's happening here. My number 3 is D.E.B.S. And then your number 2 is
D.E.B.S.
D.E.B.S. Which makes both of our number 1s.
But I'm a cheerleader.
Okay, so that gives us a tie at the very end with Bodies, 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 and consensual codependent lesbian space alien seek same at the bottom. However, that also gives us a tie at number 2 with Bottoms, with Bottoms and D.E.B.S. keep wanting to say bottoms. So this happened on our second ever episode with me and Dylan, and I said I have ideas about how I'm going to do tiebreakers, and I even workshopped it a little bit. I came up with great ideas. However, they are not in an implementation stage, so I don't have that. So I'm going to defer to you, Carly, and I'm going to say that we're going to do But I'm a Cheerleader and D.E.B.S as our two deep dives.
Yay.
So let us before we do before we do that, is there anything about the other three that you want to talk about before we go into the other movies? No? Okay. I think I am good on that as well. So let's go on to D.E.B.S. We just talked about it a little bit, but we're going to talk about the scoring and kind of the more specific aspects of it. Now, I need to talk about a production note here with my audience. The 4 areas that we have traditionally scored on have been camp, acting, writing, and overall quality. However, writing always gets us in writing is always kind of it always kind of get locked. We kind of always lock up on writing because, and this happens every single time. I'm not sure which was the acting and if this was powerful because of the acting or the writing. And then Dylan on our Christmas episode, just blanket indictment on all of my guests by saying I feel like a shitty guest for not reading all of the scripts for these movies. So you know what? I'm throwing out writing. Writing is no longer going to be one of our scores. Instead, it's going to be different every time, specific to the theme. And this time, we're going to grade on queerness. So we're going to discuss these movies, these two movies. We're going to start with D.E.B.S. So let's start with the camp aspect, which we both agreed was very high on this movie. Carly, tell me a little bit about how you felt about the camp, and then give me your score on it.
I mean, we talked a lot about the camp. It's everywhere. It's beautiful. And just so I could say, all my ratings are going to end with a 0.0 or a 0.5 because that's the way my brain works. So for camp, I gave it an 8.5.
8.5. Okay. I also kept all of mine to 0s or 5s because you told me that you were going to do that, and I was like, I don't want to mess with anything. So all of mine are 5 0s and 5s as well. Mine is very close to that. I did give it an 8.0. I just, we talked a lot about the camp already. The camp, if you can engage with it in this movie, is very, very funny. If you can't, it would seem like it seemed like they are being too cheesy, too stereotypical, too whatever. I think that they understand exactly what they're doing in this, and they're executing the camp nearly perfectly. So I completely agree there on that. Let's talk about the acting in D.E.B.S. Most of the people in this are fine. They're not the greatest actors. Jordana Brewster and Michael Clark Duncan, was that? Yeah, those are probably the two. I believe that was Michael Clark Duncan, wasn't it? I think so. Anyway, those are probably the two most famous not famous necessarily, but most well known at the time and even probably now. Jimmy Simpson, who plays Scud, has also had kind of a rise in the last few years. I really like him, but he's one of those guys that people don't usually know who I'm talking about when I say his name. Anyway, I thought they were fine. Jordana Brewster, funny story. I don't want to say that I had like a thing for her. I do think she has one of the most beautiful smiles that I've ever seen in my life. I even was writing a screenplay once about a girl with a beautiful smile, and she was the person in my brain as I was doing it. That was a long time ago. It was very bad. The thing I wrote. So we don't need to talk about it any further. Don't ask me. No, it. I think she has a really pretty smile. I think it's on display here. That's not part of acting, though. I mean, a little bit, but not really. I'm babbling. How did you feel about the acting in this movie?
So I have this thing where sometimes I confuse a very hot actress with someone who's good at acting.
Okay.
And I find Jordana Brewster in this so hot. So I also have this other issue where I'm like, do I know them from something, or are they just incredibly attractive? I didn't know her from anything that I'd seen. So she was just really pretty. So acting, I just gave it a 7.0 because I was just like, whenever she's talking, I'm enraptured. So
the two major things that you may not have seen but would know her from, if just culturally, are The Faculty. If you've ever seen that movie, have you ever seen The Faculty? You should. You'd like that, I think.
Okay.
High school movie, body snatcher movie. But she's in that, and the Fast and Furious movies. She's.
Right.
But anyway, I gave the camp on this one, or not the camp, the acting. I gave it a 6.5. I'm sorry. What did you say you gave it?
7.0.
7.0. We're within 0.5 of each other so far across the board here, but we've only gone 2 in. All right, now we're going to talk about queerness, and I'm going to defer to you here because, we're both queer, but as our lesbian, and this is a lesbian movie, I would like to hear your feelings on the queerness in this movie.
I mean, it probably doesn't deserve the score I gave it. If it's enemies to lovers, it's automatically just going to skyrocket in my ranking. So I give it a 9.0 just because.
9. Ooh, 9.
And
Nice.
and part of that is also like the time it came out. I feel like there weren't a ton of queer movies in the 2000s that dealt with it like this, like that made it such an important part of the plot. Like, it's not a side character who's gay. It's like the main character and the main villain. So that's also.
No, that's good. Enemies to lovers is very interesting, but it feels there's an I don't even know how to say this. It feels more authentic when it's like lesbian, like a same-sex thing, than it does when it's heterosexual, like it's a het relationship. I'm not sure why. There's something that feels, because maybe the power dynamic feels more even when it's like that. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I could definitely. So the enemies to lovers thing does have an effect here for me. Didn't get a 9 from me. That's shocking. That score. Not that it's bad. It's just high. We are no longer within 0.5 of each other. Also, I did give it a 7, which I think is respectable. It's high, and because I think that it does drive a lot of this. I think that because a lot of the movie is also there for the male gaze, though, as well. The hot girls in the mini skirts and stuff, or in the short skirts. I did knock it down just a little bit because I think that is for the cis het man rather than for the lesbian woman. But I do think it's high, so I did give it a 7. So which brings us to overall quality. Before you give it a 12 or whatever, that's too high. I'm just going to say that my overall quality for this one is an 8. I think that it's really, really solid, and in context, this movie is really well executed. Carly, tell me about the overall quality.
I gave it a 9.5.
9.5.
But close.
All right. So that brings the average of the total average of our average scores to a 7.9375. We're going to call it 7.94. or maybe we'll call it 7.9375. Whatever is on the screen right now that Matt put in post, that's what it is. Which brings us to our other deep dive, which is going to be "But I'm a Cheerleader," which was both of our number one movies. I'd like to talk about the camp on this one first, because it is there is so much. Not only number one, is it at kind of a camp? That's not important. I just think that it's notable. It did not affect my score, but the fact that it is at a camp means that there's a lot of production design that gets to be directed specifically for the camp in this movie. Earlier, I had mentioned I had shown the soldier with the little soldier with the thing, like the fact that basically everything in this this queer camp, this conversion therapy camp, is almost counterintuitive to what they're trying to do, because there's just so much there's so much to help these kids stay gay, and it's all very, very funny, and it works really well for me. So for this one, for the camp on But I'm a Cheerleader, it got a 9.5. Carly, how did you feel about the camp on this movie?
Yeah, I said 9.0. So
9.0.
Yeah, like all of it, the colors, everything. It's just so
All right, so that's going to bring us to the acting. I have said many times in my life that not in my life, in the last couple of years, because that's really all that it's anyway. In the last couple of years, I've said several times that I wish Natasha Leggero would have been cast on Yellow Jackets instead of Juliette Lewis, because she feels more like that character than Juliette Lewis does. That's all that to say, I really like her in basically everything I ever see her in. I think she's really great in this. I think she plays a conflicted queer person very, very well, because she's believable on both sides of the coin. RuPaul, in basically the only thing I've ever seen him in as not in drag in, is in this movie. Basically everybody across the board, it's very, there's everybody. There's an innocence that almost everybody in this cast has to maintain in order for it to work so well. And I think they all do that very, very well. How do you feel about the cast? I'll give my score in a minute. I just want to hear how you feel about the casting or the acting in this movie.
Yeah, I feel pretty similar. Like I love Clea Duvall in this. Like she's really great as Grant. Like like you said, there's just so many great casting across the board. Like it's just fantastic, and they all bring it and feel so genuine.
She specifically Clea Duvall, who is also in The Faculty. You should see The Faculty, because there's all kinds of lesbians in The Faculty. Clea Duvall, Jordana Brewster, Elijah Wood. It's just across the board. Because everyone is playing so innocent so well, makes her character seem so much more of a rebel, even though she's not being that extreme, especially to our modern eyes. But it really helps that balance, and she's very, very good in it. So I gave for acting, I gave it a 7.5. What did you give it?
8.5.
8.5. All right. All right, which brings us to the queerness. This is, I came up with the queerness as the category for this while I was watching this movie, and just seeing how so much of the movie is dedicated to the queerness. And I mentioned it before, because it goes hand in hand with the camp, because queer films are inherently campy. so much of the camp in this lends to the queerness so well, and I think it executes the queerness better than any of these movies because every little detail in this movie is either pointing toward queerness or pointing or lampooning the conversion, the queer conversion camp thing aspect of it. So it just works really, really well for me. I gave the queerness a 9.5.
Yeah. So one thing that it's just so quick. It's just the fact that they're using the shock thing as a vibrator. I'm like, of course, the queer women who aren't queer would be like, yeah, sure. I'm punishing myself, and it's like, no, that's not what she's using that for. It's beautiful. And the other thing I do have to mention is just how genuine the ending is with her, with the cheering, and like it makes me tear up whenever I hear her sing like "You're the one that I adore" and like "Don't rush for me because this is fate." Like I love how so much of the movie is like funny and joking, you know, and all that, and like silly, and like the ending, they just end it being so genuine with such a happy ending, and like it's very, I feel like it brings it together in a way that that it, without that, it would not feel as good as it does. So I give it a 10 for queerness.
10, nice. I almost gave it a 10, but it felt hard to pull that kind of a trigger to go. But that's just how I am. It's hard for me to do that. All right, which brings us to our overall quality. This movie, and we talked about it earlier, is kind of good no matter where you. I mean, it's good no matter where you fall on the queerness spectrum. People who have not experienced this can relate and can enjoy it. People who have relate and enjoy it. But outside of that, just the way that it's written, the way that the production design, everything about it, just, I say this too much, fires on all cylinders. Everything that happens in this movie is all nearly perfectly executed to make just this really great film that's very, very entertaining. How do you feel as far as the overall quality?
I mean, I think it's a masterpiece. It's like it is one of the best queer films ever made. I mean, yeah, I gave it 5 stars in Letterboxd, so I give it a 10 for quality here because it's
10.
Yeah, there
it is. I have it has a 4.5 on Letterboxd, so I gave it a 9.5. So that brings the total for or the combined average total for But I'm a Cheerleader to 9.18, which is better than the 8, which is better than the what was the other one? The 7.9375 for D.E.B.S, which means that But I'm a Cheerleader wins the camp trophy. Yay! Which means that all of you out there, and Carly, have earned your Sapphic Mess Badge. And everybody's happy, and we had a great time. Carly, how was your first experience on Camp Film Camp?
It was great. We got to talk about some very queer films. We were both queer, which makes it even more special to me. So, yeah, this was great. This was awesome.
Yeah, me too. I had a great time. I was looking forward to having you on this show, and you nailed it. I'm so happy. Yes, we're both queer, but you're also one of my best friends. So I was so happy to get to sit here and talk about movies with you. Which brings me to next month. I'm going to have another friend on this show. Our guest counselor for next time is Stacy, who you saw on our holiday episode, the holiday 2024 special. Stacy's going to come on for our next Roger Corman, next in our Roger Corman series, which is the Corman Poe cycle, meaning we are going to cover all 8 of the movies that the Edgar Allan Poe movies that Roger Corman made. So those movies, if you want to catch up before next month's episode, we are discussing The Haunted Palace, The House of Usher, Mask of the Red Death, The Pit and the Pendulum, The Premature Burial, The Raven, Tales of Terror, and The Tomb of Ligeia. So catch up on your Corman Poe movies and join us back here in March for the Corman Poe cycle badge. Carly, where can people find you?
I'm just here. I'm just around.
She's around. Look around you. You might see a Carly.
I'd hope you'd want me back on the channel at some point.
Oh,
but we'll see.
Yeah, you're going to be back here on the channel soon. In fact, you are on an upcoming panel for Cinema Soapbox. You're going to be on the panel for that on the next several episodes. And you're on a recent episode. So this is your first Camp from Film Camp, but I'm realizing you were on a recent episode of All-Time Top 5 as part of the panel on that. You didn't compete in that, but you did. You were on there. So, but yeah. So you're going to see Carly more on this channel, and you're going to love it. Tell me in the comments, how'd you feel about Carly and her being on the channel? Tell me how you felt about these movies we watched. What was your favorite of this list that we watched? And do you have any other queer camp movies that you really loved? Talk to us in the comments. Camp is dismissed. I don't know what I say. I don't remember what I say at the end, but that sounds fine.